Hello, my name is Darcy and I'm one of your friendly neighborhood teen and 20-somethings librarians. Today I'm going to show you how to make a dandelion embroidery embroidered on mesh fabric. So let's talk about what you'll need. If you picked up the kit, you should have one small embroidery hoop, a small amount of white mesh or tulle fabric, a needle in its little safety packet, some embroidery floss in white and brown, some felt in white and green, a small container of glue, and a Q-tip. You'll also need a pair of scissors for this activity. If you didn't pick up the kit, never fear. You can find all of these items at a craft store. So let's get started. So this is an embroidery project, so the very first thing you'll need to do is set up your frame with your hoop and your fabric. So we're going to unscrew our hoop a little bit here at the top and then pop out our middle ring. We're going to take our mesh fabric and place it over the middle ring. And then we're going to put our secondary hoop, the larger one, over that fabric and hoop again. And then we're going to tighten it a little bit and kind of pull our fabric so it's very flat across the top. You might have to, this might take you a while because you got to do some tightening and then you got to pull the fabric a little bit, but take your time. Make sure it's all really nice and pulled taut, but not so tight that it's going to rip. Okay, and once you're satisfied that it's pulled pretty tight, you can kind of bounce your finger on it a little bit, but not too hard. And there are no ripples in this surface up here. You're pretty good to go. So the next thing that we're going to need, because this is a different kind of embroidery, is our white felt. So we are going to use this white felt to cut out the center of our dandelion that everything is going to be sewn out from, all of the little dandelion seed fluffy bits. You just need to cut a small circle. There's no particular one, it's just how big or how small you want it. So I'm just going to trim something out and see if I like it. I don't think that's too bad of a size, but it's definitely not round. So we'll keep trimming a little bit until it's a bit rounder. It doesn't have to be perfect. And once I've trimmed it to a size that I think is good and acceptable, I'm going to set it on top of our frame and go ahead and get my needle and white embroidery floss ready. So we'll take our needle out of its little safety packet. Do be careful, they are sharp. Right there. And I'm going to take our embroidery thread. So this is the white embroidery floss you have. It is a full piece of embroidery floss. It's not very long, but if you look at the end, it separates out into 6 tiny strings. So what I'm actually going to do is cut a piece that's, I don't know, maybe 1.5 feet long. And then I'm going to separate out those strings because I only want one thread of embroidery floss at a time. So there are a bunch of ways you can do this. They're twisted together and it can make a bit of a mess. I tend to just kind of untwist it a little bit and run my fingernail down the thread so that all of those pieces down the way get untwisted a little. And then I will pick one and pull the rest of the floss off of it. So you get this snarl, but if you're careful, the snarl will kind of undo itself. It's just a little bunch. So we're going to set aside our other threads that we're not using right now. We'll come back to them. And we're going to take our single strand of white embroidery floss and we're going to thread it on our needle. All right, and I am not very good at embroidery or sewing, so I usually just tie one little slip knot right there, just so it won't escape off of my needle. And then you're going to go to the other end of your embroidery thread, and you're going to tie a couple of knots. Now, normally when you're doing embroidery, you do not tie knots. You don't knot your fabric, your threads at all, because it doesn't look very nice. But I, like I said, am not very good at this. So I tend to knot it just to keep things more stabilized, especially since we're going to be attaching some fabric to our canvas. It's not just thread going in that canvas. So I usually do 3 or 4 little knots right on top of each other at the end. And I'm gonna leave this tail on there for now because I usually tie off on the tails. So now we've got our threaded needle with one piece of white embroidery thread. We've got our little white circle and we've got our canvas. So this little white circle actually goes on the back of the canvas, right in the middle. And we're gonna stitch it on and do our very first little white seedy bit. So I'm gonna go up, I'm gonna start from the bottom, holding the little circle on there with one of my fingers. I'm gonna thread up, kind of close to the side. And I'm gonna give it one little stitch through. So the nice thing about using kind of a tulle or mesh fabric is that there are these huge holes. You don't wanna rip this fabric at all. So make sure you're going up and down inside of your little holes if you can. It's hard to see on the white fabric, so don't stress about it too much. But as we can see, so I did one little tiny stitch just to tack it on. And now I'm actually gonna start my seed from the bottom. So I'm gonna go out, I just stitched down on where I tacked it. I'm gonna just go out from there, about that far, up through one of the holes in the tulle fabric. And now I've got this little line. So from here, I'm gonna do the little wispy bits on the end. So I'm up, I'm gonna go down at a bit of an angle, just a little ways away. So that's one little wispy bit. And then I'm gonna go up back through the same spot I first went up through. So I'm just making little loops. I'm gonna make, I don't know, 2 or 3 of those for this. Probably each seed gets anywhere between 2 and 5 if you're feeling crazy, little wispy bits on the end of each seed. So if you don't go up exactly in the same spot that you went down in originally, that's okay, but it does look a little bit better if you can. And then we go back up through the same hole right around the top spot. And then once you've done all the little wispies you want to do, you go follow your first long stitch back into your white circle. And that makes one little seed. So basically you're just going to make a whole bunch of these all the way around, make them different lengths if you like. You don't have to go the full circle if you don't want to, but it does look pretty cute. So we're just going to keep stitching little seeds like this. So we've gone down through a section, so we're going to, this is what it looks like from the other side. So we just came back down through. So rather than starting another seed right from this spot, what I'm actually going to do is do kind of sneaky jog through the felt. I'm going to stitch sideways through this felt so you don't see the stitch from the top to get a little bit further over. And from here, I'm going to start another seed. Seed wispy. So we'll say like right there. And you want to make sure you're pulling all your threads tight. If you're noticing that your canvas isn't pulled tight, try tightening your ring some more and keep going. So we went down with that one, so now we need to do our little wispies. We'll go out a little ways, and then we'll come back into our same spot. That was a long wispy. And we'll say right there maybe. And back to our same spot. And then we'll do a little short one over here. And back to our same spot. So now I'm going to go up through the middle and pull it back to the center. And there you have it. So you're going to do these all the way around. If you run out, if this thread runs out, just pull another single strand off of the piece of white that you first pulled from, And we'll come back when you've got enough little wispy seed guys that you are feeling confident. Remember, keep your knots. If you're going to knot things, if you're going to start a new string, keep them on the back and underneath this little white circle, because we aren't going to see that. And I will see you when we've got some more little seeds on this guy. All right, so I have now sewn quite a few of the little seeds, and I have used 5 of my 6 single strands of embroidery floss from that first thread. So I'm looking like this. I did pull a little too hard and rip my tulle on the outside of the ring, so that's not great, but it's not the worst. We're actually going to glue all of this down at the end anyway. But this is how many I have done so far. This is the front. I think I'm going to do maybe 2 more to kind of fill in over here, maybe 1 over here, just to keep it a little bit more round. But you could stop here, you could do less, you could do more, whatever you like. So on my first one, I did a whole bunch because I thought that looked cuter, and I did a lot of little tiny sprays at the end of my seeds, but I'm kind of liking how wild and open this one is. So I'm going to do a couple more. One other thing to note when you're stitching these, I did say to start from the bottom if you can, but sometimes you're sewing them and you accidentally get started from the top. It's fine. However they work for you is totally okay. And do not worry about how much of a mess the back of this white looks like. I mean, mine is a disaster. We're going to be covering this up, and it's supposed to be viewed from the front anyway. So no worries. I'm going to stitch a couple more little seeds, and then we'll go on to the next step. I think I'm going to stop there. A couple of my double stitches were a little wonky, but that's okay. I'm not too worried about it. So the next step we're going to go on to, I'm going to tie off my white thread, and then I'm going to go ahead and add in the little brown seeds around the center. So they'll look like this. You don't have to add this in if you don't want to. I think it kind of helps your dandelion look more like a dandelion and less like a amoeba. But I'll show you how they work, and you can decide whether or not you want to add them yourself. So first, we'll tie off our white thread. All right, so now we'll go on to the seeds. So we're going to take a piece of our brown embroidery floss, and you have less of this, so you probably don't need to even snip it, but just like we did with the white, we're going to kind of spin it out a little bit, and then we're going to take 1 strand of brown and pull that out. So you've got all your leftover strands, which you may or may not need depending on how many seeds you decide to do. And then you've got your single string of it. So we're going to thread this on our needle, tie off the other end. So with our threaded and knotted needle and brown embroidery floss, we are going to start sewing the seeds. So the seeds are simple V shapes, but you're going to shape them directly around the ends of your white fluffy seed tops, I guess. So you start from the back, of course, and you're just going to pick a seed top, and you're going to go up right at the end of one of those white fluffy boys in the middle, and you're going to pick a side and go to one side with a tiny stitch, back down, and then you're going to go up again on the opposite side of the white fluffy, seed end, and then down into the same spot you originally came up in. So it makes a teeny tiny little V around the end of one of your white fluffy boys. You're gonna go through and do that on all of the little white fluffs that you have made around your white circle. So that is all my seeds done because I didn't have very many little floofy white seed stems. But if you have a lot, go for it. Do a lot. I think this is one of those projects that looks good if you like put in a ton of little seedlings, or if you decide to just do a handful of them. So now that we're done with our brown, we are going to tie it off on the back. So I'm going to do just like a half stitch through some of this mess of thread back here. See if I can find the tail. Nope. So I'll just do a couple of stitches and then tie it off. The last thing we need to do with our sewing is add the green fluffy bit to the back. That would go around like the stem of the dandelion. So that is what your green felt is for. What I did was I cut out a circle a good bit bigger than our little white center seed head of green felt, and then cut snips into it basically. So let's cut out a pretty big green circle. We'll use most of our green felt for this. And again, it doesn't have to be perfectly round, just something vaguely circular. So that guy's pretty big. So I want to save, it's got to still be connected in the middle. But otherwise, I'm just going to kind of cut in here and make some little tufts. So that's a little wild looking. But we're going to tidy it up a little bit. Now be careful, this is felt, so it will pull apart really easily, especially when you have these kind of skinny bits. So we'll just snip a little bit. We'll kind of tidy things, but not too much. Again, this is going to be on the back. It's going to be something you see through the mesh, not in front of. So I've got this little guy. I'm going to hold it up behind our white circle, and yeah, I think that'll look nice. So to sew it on there, I'm going to flip everybody over, show you what it looks like from this side. We're going to rethread our needle with white embroidery thread. You should have a fair bit of it left, unless you went totally ham, in which case if you have white thread, that'll work, or you can glue this on the back if you're feeling feisty, but thread is the best way to get it sturdily on there. Okay, so with our white embroidery floss, just one thread of it, we are going to go right in the middle and stitch up. Now you want to be careful when you're stitching on your green backing that you don't cover up any of your seeds. So just like 2 or 3 little stitches was really all you need to hold it in there. Just to make sure it is in the right spot. And there you have it. You can tie off your back thread. And you have finished the sewing part of this project. Okay, to finish your project, all you're going to need is your completed sewing ring and your glue packet and your Q-tip. This is just for applying glue, but whatever you want to apply glue with is fine. So we're going to flip this guy over, and there are a couple of ways you can do this. Generally, when you are kind of finishing your embroidery, you sew a back, but we want you to be able to see the light through this. So we're actually just going to glue down our fabric to this edge here. You could open up your hoop and get that glue all the way in the sides, but these hoops aren't like great quality, unfortunately. And I'm worried that you won't be able to get your project back in there. So I would just glue on this edge. So we're going to open up our glue packet. And get our Q-tip in there and get a fair bit of glue. This is just white Elmer's glue. And we're just going to kind of run it along the sides. You don't want a ton on there because it's just going to glorp over. Kind of run down the middle of the seam because that fabric is going to get glue on it anyway. Okay, and I'm going to kind of smooth that out with my finger just to make sure it gets in there and there's not like too much glue. Now you're going to roll your fabric in and press it into that glue. And then I'm going to bunch up the extra fabric in the middle and use a scrap piece of thread to just kind of tie it all together so it stays pulled in a little bit. It doesn't have to be perfect. If you wanted this to be really precise, you could stitch, just like quick stitch through all of this and then pull it tight, but I'm not that worried about it. And then you're going to let that dry until the glue is completely dry. All right, so we have let our glue dry for most of an afternoon, and it seems fairly well stuck on there. So we're going to go ahead and trim it. You can come in with your scissors and trim off the excess fabric. So I cut right to the edge of the frame, just all the way around. And there you have it, your very own Dandelion Embroidery. If you have any questions about this project, go ahead and toss them in the comments and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you're looking for other good creative projects to do, we have tons of stuff on our YouTube channel. And if you are a member of the East Baton Rouge Parish Library, you can access Creative Bug online with your library card. It has tons of cool projects that walk you through with videos from experts. And it is an excellent resource if you're looking for something cool and crafty to do. So thanks for watching. Y'all have a great day.